All right, well, welcome to OLC 40 Term 1A. This is Class 26, Unit 3, Lesson 13, Key Question 13, and then we're going to begin Lesson 14 when it's over. It is Week 8, and it is October 20th, 2025. All right, here are all the ways to contact me. The studio number is 1-800-465-7144. The office number is 1-800-667-3703, extension 2211. My email is jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca or jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. If you want to contact me on Facebook, my name handle is capital G, capital P-E-R-C-Y space, capital W-A-H-S-A. When you reach out to me that way, please not only send a friend request, but let me know what your full name is and which of the 4 courses I teach that you are taking. All these classes are saved and recorded and placed on YouTube. There are 2 different YouTube channels. There is the WASA Distance Education YouTube channel, and there is my teacher YouTube channel. The teacher one is called G Percy WASA as well. Either one will work. If you find that what you're looking at doesn't quite match what I'm teaching, you might have last year's course, in which case just go to 2425 OLC 40 Term 2B and look at last year's stuff. Okay, there we go. All right, how to hand in assignments. First of all, make sure you send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. This way the secretary can log that you submitted the work. Please include your full name, the course name, the assignment number and name. If an assignment asks for both a rough and a good draft, please label which one is which and include them both in the same email. So the main postal strike is over, but we're still on rotating postal strikes, so I still do not advise you to hand anything in through mail. It's just not safe. If you have a learning center in your community, you can give it to the DEC, and they will scan your assignments and email it to me. Hang on to your originals. You can fax it to me at 1-800-463-7852, Ontario. Let me know because we keep our fax machine on sleep, and I will turn it on. If you live in town, you can bring the assignments in to me. If you like to do your work on the computer, email it to me as an attachment. Some people prefer to share a document with me if they're using Google Docs. When you do that, remember to include both me and the student work email as able to view and edit. Otherwise, I can't see the assignment and I can't print it, and I really need to print it to be able to mark it. Some people like to do their assignments in pen or pencil, and then I often find they take photographs of the assignments and send it to me either in Facebook or in email. Only take a picture of one page at a time. Check that the writing is not blurry. Don't tilt the phone while taking the photograph or you'll end up with one part small and one part big. And send it as an attachment to an email rather than directly as an email. It comes up as a weird size for some reason. I don't know why. If you're going to be doing a lot of photographs, it's way easier to download a scanner app and take scanner pictures. It's not really any harder than using your phone, but produces a much better quality. I use Adobe Scan. You can download it for free. Once you've installed it, you open it up and you just hold your camera over your assignment like normal. The big difference is it allows you to have there's little dots that line up with the corner. So that will be your picture, not whatever you see in the screen. Or there can be like a little border. You just keep taking those pictures until you've got your whole assignment taken. Hit continue, and now it will let you preview. You can go back and reorder pages, crop pages, retake a picture if you need to. Now you hit save PDF and give it a name, and then save it wherever you save your things. Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, wherever that is. Okay, this is the week 8 planner. Today is Monday, October 20th, class 26. Today we're going to be working on lesson 13 and we will begin lesson 14. We should be finished unit 3 by the end of this week. It's possible we'll get started unit 4. Unit 4 is a little bit shorter because it's winding up the course and getting you ready, so the assignments aren't quite as hard to explain at this point. We've taught a lot and you should be pretty strong. Okay, so we are working on literacy skills in the world of work. By the end of the lesson, you'll have achieved lesson goals if you can. Understand the new vocabulary learned in the lesson. Read independently for school, personal, and work-related purposes. Construct a personal reflection describing the ideal work for you and explaining which communication skills are needed to function effectively for that job, and edit your own writing independently. We ended last class with working our way through the planning stage for key question 13, and we were on page 38 in unit 3. So we're still talking about the planning stage, which isn't in your unit, but we've talked about the planning stage before. We're going to be continuing that now and talking about how to plan your journal. Okay. Oop, not sure what that is there. Okay. So remember that for each of the support questions we did, I thought of a few things that, sorry, were my results, and then I thought of how I could kind of build on those results to talk about it. I just find it's much easier if you do some planning to be able to write your rough draft. So think about, first of all, which of these items is really important. For instance, you wouldn't take the job if it didn't have that criteria. So for me, indoors is that thing. I know I couldn't handle a job that was outdoors 8 hours a week. It just wouldn't work very well for me. So that would be a deal breaker. Also, is there any added criteria that you have in mind? So for example, maybe you want to work indoors, but it has to be an office environment. Or you want to work indoors, but it doesn't really matter. It could be a factory, a restaurant, a retail store. Doesn't really matter the environment to you. For criteria that you have that are not deal breakers, that are more flexible, what type of range are you thinking of in terms of that criteria? So, for example, in task variety, I listed that I wanted some task variety. So I could add on to that and say, well, I know I wouldn't enjoy a factory job where I had to do the exact same task over and over for 8 hours a day. I've got a friend who does that, and basically she's kind of screwing things in, and then a new one comes along and she screws that in, and it's just the same thing over and over. I would probably go a little mental doing that. I would get too bored and start to daydream. I like a job that has maybe 5 to 10 main things that I'm doing, but that I can alternate through the day. So some variety, but not like something brand new every single day. Okay. Now, minimal supervision is also kind of important to me because I find I get really stressed out if I feel like people are watching me or judging me. I really prefer to be given a task and then left alone to do it the way I think is best. I get annoyed if I feel like I'm being micromanaged. On the other hand, I wouldn't want to do a job like lighthouse keeper where I was completely all by myself and didn't have anyone around to ask questions of if a new situation arose that I wasn't sure how to handle. So while this lists all my 5 most important uh, environment specifications, there might be some other ones that didn't make my top 5, but that are still pretty important to me. For example, I'm not really very fond of driving, so a long commute would not appeal to me. And I don't mind some noise, but a place that was super noisy, like a bar, would kind of drive me bonkers. I don't have to pick which days I work, but I do like having the freedom to schedule my day how I please, as long as the work gets done. All right, support question number 5 was about work values. I chose professional growth, humanitarianism, and independence. So this one I would probably split up into 3 different sections to brainstorm one little tiny section for each value. I probably only need to say a few sentences about each one because that won't take very long to make a paragraph. So professional growth, I do get bored easily, so a job that allows me to grow and take on new challenges is something I value. Independence. I think we already talked about this, but it's come up here in values. So why is this important to me? I think to me, I equate independence with trust. Like if you are constantly supervising me, I feel like maybe that's because you don't quite trust me. So I think I value that because of that reason. Humanitarianism. I'm not really motivated by making a lot of money. Now, I don't mean that I don't want money, obviously. I need to pay the bills just like everybody else does. But I mean, I don't have like, ooh, I need to make millions kind of thing. Um, but if I do spend a lot of my time working, I want it to be worthwhile and I want it to help others because I don't want to feel like I'm wasting all that time. I want it to be useful. Okay, last but not least, don't forget to talk about communication skills, okay? Different jobs may require different reading and communication skills. Construction workers, for example, might need to know how to read blueprints. Retail workers might need to read about new inventory procedures. Skilled trade workers might need to read and understand machine manuals. So, whatever your job or your ideal job requires, write about that. I'm writing about teaching because that's what I have. And I'm hoping just kind of as you see the samples, that will sort of help spark ideas. So, for me, for reading, I need to be able to read student work. I need to be able to help read textbooks out loud. I need to read to assess the student understanding. If I'm reading a journal a student wrote, I need to be thinking, does this journal show that they understood what they read? I need to read to learn new teaching techniques or to learn about new laws, policies, or regulations. For writing, I need to be able to summarize information in writing. I need to be able to use writing to explain a concept. I need to show the steps to a procedure in writing. And I also need to express ideas or opinions. Um, Next ones are talking and listening. And again, these will be different for each job. Like if I worked in sales, I might need to really focus on persuading people to buy things. A lawyer might need to use talking to argue about stuff or negotiate a plea deal. It's a different kind of talking than what I do, for example. So I need to be able to communicate new ideas and information. I need to explain how to do new skills. I need to be able to encourage and support others. I need to be able to facilitate discussions and to express opinions. I also need to be able to use my talking to assess student understanding. Like if I'm talking to somebody and as I'm asking questions, I'm sort of trying to figure out, do they understand what I'm saying and what I mean? Because that's important, right? If you talk above students' heads, then people get frustrated. For listening, listening to understand what people mean, listening to figure out where there is confusion, right? If a student is talking to me, I'm trying to think, okay, are they getting this or is there some sort of misconception that I need to kind of fix and correct? Listening to show respect for others, right? If you're the one doing all the talking, people don't feel like you have respect for them. Okay, so if I'm creating a rough draft, I take my notes from the brainstorming and figure out how to turn it into a coherent paragraph. I'm probably going to need to turn my rough ideas into sentences, unless I wrote in complete sentences. I still might need to change them, right? I might need to add more examples and explanations. Remember that each one of these topics normally needs to have its own paragraph. Try to keep each paragraph focused on one big idea and leave a line between paragraphs to help your readers see where new major ideas begin. So here is a sample of how my rough copy might sound, okay? Please keep in mind you do not have to copy me. I'm just giving you a demonstration because I know sometimes people are having a hard time picturing it if they've never seen this kind of stuff before. So mine says, when I took the Holland Code personality test, I discovered that I ranked high in artistic, investigative, and social career types. Artistic made sense to me because I love to draw and paint. I enjoy reading and learning new things, so investigative also seems like a good match. I was a little surprised by social because I consider myself a bit shy. On the other hand, I do enjoy being around friends. Some of the job matches for social were education and counseling, both of which appeal to me. For the artistic category, you have things like interior design and radio and TV work, which I'm not really sure I've got all the skills for, but I would love doing. The investigative category seems to lean heavily into the sciences, which I enjoy, but I really don't have the math skills to support most science careers. When I check out the NOC search bar, that's the Canadian National Occupational Classification Database, I entered social and investigative to see what careers had both qualities. 96 possibilities showed up, but a lot of those were heavily science-based. When I switched out and took investigative out and put artistic in instead, I found a lot more jobs showed up that seemed like careers I would enjoy and be good at. Things like ECE workers, craft instructors, in announcers. So I found this test really generated a lot of interesting ideas about alternative careers I could do. So for each one of the topics, you're going to create a rough draft paragraph, just like that example. Remember to tackle the topic of communication skills. How would that job you're thinking of use your speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills? Now, there's no right or wrong answer. Every job is going to use a different combination of skills. However, the one caution I want to make is sometimes I have students who work in skilled trades and they will tell me, oh, no literacy or no communication skills are needed in their job because it's so physical. And I get that. That job might be 80 to 90% physical. But is it really true that you don't need any communication skills? I feel like you probably still have foremen or managers or coworkers or clients that you need to talk to, listen to, maybe negotiate, maybe discuss how you're going to share tasks, maybe ask questions to clarify what they mean. All those type of skills are also a type of literacy or communication skills. It's fine to focus on those if that's the main thing that you would use in your job. Also, after you've gotten a rough draft done for each one of the categories, take a look over at what you've written. Are there spots where you've rambled on a bit and got a bit off topic and you might need to remove some things? Are there some paragraphs that are too short and might need some more details? What can you do to improve the overall journal so it makes more sense? After you're finished this revision, remember to check through for cups, capitalization, usage is all the grammar stuff, right? Punctuation and spelling errors. If you're not sure, keep in mind that these things have been discussed in previous classes and they're discussed quite a bit in Unit 1. Generally speaking, the biggest errors I see for capitalization is people forget to start a sentence with a capital letter, or they forget to use the word I as a capital I. For punctuation, people are joining sentences with commas instead of using periods. Spelling errors are usually errors that are similar, homophones, things that sound alike but don't look alike, like two and two, or there and there. For usage is the grammar stuff. Usage is like creating a complete sentence, not doing run-on sentences, making sure your subject agrees with your verb, all those kinds of things. Sort of nitpicky stuff, right? Your ideas are done. You're just kind of tidying up the overall copy. Okay, so that would be the end of lesson 13. And now we're going to move on to lesson 14, which is all about business documents. So here are the success criteria for lesson 14. By the end of this lesson, you will have achieved the lesson goals if you can. Before you start reading, choose a reading approach that matches your reading purpose and choose reading strategies that help you preview a text. During and after reading, use appropriate strategies to track and record information, locate key details, and make connections between your life and the text. Respond appropriately to a job advertisement. Use appropriate strategies to generate, organize your ideas for writing. Draft, revise, and edit texts in the appropriate format, tone, purpose for a specific audience, and then produce informational writing for personal purposes. So today we're working on cover letters and resumes. They are considered a type of informational writing for the purposes of this course, okay? So in our last lesson, lesson 13, we talked about personality traits and we looked at what our ideal job would be and how literacy skills would be valuable in that job. Another thing that many businesses and hiring managers are looking for are personality traits that are important to do the job well. If you're looking for a job, you're going to need to write a cover letter. And this is a document where you're not only going to emphasize your job skills and experience, but your personality traits and your values. Your personality is what can make you a great employee. Think about what personality traits will be useful in your ideal job, right? Like somebody who's outgoing and energetic might make a great salesperson, but might not make the best administrative clerk, right? whereas someone who's very introverted and quiet, and organized might hate sales, but might be wonderful as an administrative assistant. So different personalities often have different jobs they're best at. Is a small list of personality traits. There's lots more lists out there. If you want to look on the internet, you can find all sorts. Keep in mind you want to focus on positive ones, right? Things that people will definitely want to hire. And one of the reasons we're talking about this is for some reason I found students really focused on hardworking. Now, if you are working in something like construction, then hardworking is super important. But if you're doing an office job, I don't know that hardworking is the first word that a manager or an owner might be looking for when they're trying to hire somebody. So I wanted to kind of branch out and increase people's vocabulary and help you kind of think outside the box. What are some other words that might work? So things like integrity, that would be important if you're handling money or if you're doing jobs where you have to make a lot of ethical decisions, like say teaching or health services or childcare worker. Hardworking, yep. Anything where it's physical labor, that's a big one. Flexibility, super important if you're doing shift work or if there's a lot of different jobs you have to do. Team oriented, also important if you have a lot of things where you're working on projects with other people. Determined, problem solving. Initiative. Initiative is like you kind of look around, see what needs to get done, and sort of dive in. You don't necessarily wait for someone to say, hey, can you please do this? You just kind of look around and you know. Loyalty, that used to be super important. It isn't always as important, but depending on the job, it can still be useful. Responsible, dependable, those are very similar words. Organized, trustworthy. Again, if you're handling money, people want you to be trustworthy. If you're handling confidential information, if you are working at a legal office, a medical office, a bank, people want to feel like they can trust you and that you're not going to blab their business everywhere. Right? Honest, adaptable. Adaptable is a lot like flexible, but I feel like it makes me think of more long-term things. Reliable, meticulous. Meticulous, I think of as being someone who is extremely careful, um, goes very slowly, but very thoroughly. Someone like an accountant. Accountants are often meticulous. Outgoing, energetic, multitasking. Some jobs involve a lot of multitasking, right? Teaching does, for example. Social work would involve a lot of multitasking. Focused. Again, that depends on the job. Some jobs that's really important, some jobs it's not. Detail oriented, friendly, that's usually important in retail. Creative, if you're doing a job like advertising or if you're a music teacher, though creativity is an important part. Calm, loads of jobs where that's important. And a quick learner. That's important if there's a lot of new things you're going to have to learn. Oh, this is a longer list if you need some different words. She uses a few words that I don't know that I was crazy about, but again, it's just to give you some ideas for brainstorming. Oh, I didn't know. Sorry. I accidentally touched the little thing. So, it says that 23% of employees lack the basic skills needed to perform 90% of the job. Looking out for or exhibiting character traits can indicate ahead of time that you will make an excellent employee. I'm not going to worry about the five because I thought that was confusing. So they talk a little bit more about each skill and how it can be useful. And then there's this lovely chart here where it talks about related skills, how you could talk about it, how you could show it. Obviously, you don't want to copy these things word for word, okay? But it can give you some ideas if you're struggling to think about how to talk about stuff, okay? Okay, where am I? There we go. Keep in mind what type of job that you are applying for. Yep. Okay, we talked about this already. We're good. Okay, so moving on to specifics about writing a cover letter. A cover letter is often required by employers along with a resume from candidates who are interested in a job. Now, not every job ad is going to ask for a cover letter. Sometimes they just want you to fill out a paper or a digital application. Things like McDonald's, Dairy Queen, that kind of stuff might very well have that. A cover letter is more used as a way of personalizing a resume to make it more specific to the exact job that you are applying for. Your resume is going to list all your job and your education experience. But if you have a job history with a variety of different work experiences, a cover letter can provide more information about job skills and experiences that apply specifically to the job you're hoping for. To give you an example of what I mean by that, when I was first looking for teaching jobs, at that point in time, I had a bunch of experience working in retail, working as a cashier, working at a restaurant. And then I had a few things that involved teaching type stuff, doing tutoring, working as an art instructor, that kind of stuff. So my resume had all those things on it. But my cover letter changed depending on whether I was looking for a teaching job or if I was looking for another retail job to sort of keep money going until I found a better teaching job. So cover letters are really useful in that way. Um, when you have experience in a lot of different areas or you're changing job careers, that kind of thing. Okay. A cover letter is considered a type of business document and it needs to reflect the formality appropriate for business communication. The tone needs to be formal and serious. Okay, this is not the time to be flippant or silly. The audience could be the boss, the manager, or someone in human resources. I know technically I am always the audience, but you need to picture that you're writing it for an actual manager. Occasionally people will write really silly things, and it's like, if you wouldn't write that to a real job, don't write it to me because I'm also looking at this as if I were thinking about hiring you, and that's how I market. So if you put something kind of goofy in there that I don't think would be appealing to a hiring manager, it's going to cost you marks, right? Any one of these people can screen you out of the running. And these days, right now, there are so many people applying for each job in a lot of areas that they are looking for ways to screen people out. So you don't want to give them any opportunities. Your purpose is instead to try and persuade them to want to know more about you. They want to come and talk to you and find out if you would be a good fit for the job in the company, right? Nobody gets hired in the cover letter alone, but they can definitely get screened out on the cover letter. So formatting, whenever you're setting up a cover letter, I'm going to strongly suggest put it in block format. There is also modified block format, but the problem I find is these days with most people using computers, block format just looks so much better on a computer. And basically everything just lines up on the left-hand margin. It's really easy to do. I think it looks good. So I strongly encourage you to use that. Unless you've got a good reason to use modified block, I would stick to block format. Okay. Every cover letter is expected to have several sections. Leave a space between each section. I look for these, okay? Um, if you skip these, again, you lose marks. The biggest one I find people forget is they forget to put their own name and address on it. I know that if you were emailing it or sending it in an envelope, there's an address there. But the problem is sometimes the person that opens the mail or prints off these isn't the same person as the person who's reviewing it. So you want to make sure that it's physically on that letter so they know how to get in touch with you because it would be terrible if they absolutely wanted to hire you but couldn't figure out how to reach you. So make sure that's the first thing on the page. Next is the date. Then you've got the recipient's name, their job title if they have one, and an address. Then some sort of greeting like, Dear Sir, to whom it may concern. And then several body paragraphs about your education, your experience, and your personality traits. Then a closing like yours or sincerely, your signature. You also want to put your printed name in like text so that they can read it. On the next page, there is an example of a cover letter in block format. Oh, sorry. It went out of my big one. Hang on, let's see if I can get it back into that mode. There we go. Okay. So address is first, then the date, then the recipient address, and here, so manager. And the reason you want the job title is because it's quite possible that between the time they started advertising and the time you get hired, that the person who's doing the job has changed. Maybe Stephen Quinn is no longer there. Maybe it's someone completely new now. But as long as you've got the job title there, people will still know who to send it to. So really, the job title is super important, okay? All right, and then you got your greeting up top, leave a space. Do your body paragraphs, leave a space between each body paragraph. Your closing here, they've used yours sincerely. Then they've done their signature and the printed name. This part is enclosed resume. That is really common back in the day when you were handing in a physical letter and then a physical resume so that people need to look for it. These days, I might say attachment included in an email if it's an email. If you're still physically sending it, like a physical letter, then go ahead and use enclosed. Okay, so read the job ad below. Notice that it's looking for a wide variety of skills, education and training, job experience, specific skills, and personality traits. Use the subheadings to preview the text and understand where to locate the information that you will need. You may want to skim the job ad quickly to get an overview of it, and then reread it closely to look for the relevant job details that sound important. Try underlining the most important information in each section so you can easily find it again. As you are reading, think about how the information might connect to your own work, volunteering, or educational experiences. Do you meet the qualifications? Are you over or underqualified overall, or maybe in different areas? So, this is the job ad. It's for a maintenance worker. It is from the Capital Housing Department. There's two full-time positions. They list the hiring manager there. This is based on a real ad, but I tried to change anything that was personal. Keep in mind, it's no longer a current job ad. So they listed job summary of what the main part of it is. Under the supervision of the maintenance supervisor, the maintenance worker will be responsible for the overall site and facility maintenance of the community administration, social services, sustainable development, education, health center, and emergency services building. Okay. The maintenance worker shall complete daily, weekly, monthly, semi-annual, and annual compliance checks of building site systems as required, perform minor repairs to buildings and assets, perform ground maintenance and upkeep of applicable buildings, assist in living, lifting, moving, and assembling furniture and equipment to and from and within the buildings, maintain proper storage and inventory of equipment or machinery at various scheduled times, communicate and receive work orders that need to be resolved with outside service people or tradespeople, perform winter maintenance of sidewalks, steps, and parking lots, tow trailers and equipment to other work sites, set up land-based equipment when off-site, okay, perform minor carpentry, plumbing, painting, and maintenance as it arises, and any other duty as directed by the maintenance supervisor. Qualifications: minimum grade 12 diploma or the equivalent, like a GED, or working towards the OSSD. That's what we're doing right now. So you don't have to have a high school diploma to do this job, okay? Certification related to operation of equipment used as an asset. So if you had, heavy equipment machinery certification or other things that you're going to be working on, maybe furnace certification or central air certification or something like that, right? Previous working experience in maintenance, must have a valid driver's license and access to a reliable vehicle. So I want to point out when they say an asset, that means it's good, but you don't have to have it. When they say you must have it, that means they're not going to hire you without it. Okay. Necessary knowledge: able to troubleshoot maintenance issues with minimal supervision, able to read building prints, drawings, and schematics, able to learn the building management system. Computer skills: Microsoft email, internet, and online collaboration tools. And then developed competencies. Some of these are very similar to what we talked about with the personality traits. So because they mention these, I would do my best to mention them in my cover letter. Now, keep in mind, you don't want to mention anything that you know you're bad at. So, for example, let's say you really aren't very good at time management. Okay, well, then don't put that in there because they will very quickly realize that that is true. Emphasize maybe instead that you're great at teamwork, communication skills. They're also looking for people who are self-motivated, able to work both independently as part of a team. Um, Resilience, able to bounce back from setbacks, manage stress, and maintain a positive outlook in challenging situations. Okay, that's important because they're giving you a heads up there. There's going to be setbacks, there's going to be stress, and there's going to be challenges. So we want to make sure that you're not going to get overly depressed or overly angry, and you're going to be able to handle it and stay calm and keep on working. Okay. You got to kind of read between the lines there. Working conditions requires physical exertion to manually move, lift, carry, pull, or push heavy objects or materials. Requires stopping, kneeling, stopping, yeah, kneeling, crawling, bending, turning, reaching, climbing, and balancing. Must be comfortable working indoors and outdoors year round. Some work sites will include loud noise, dust, fumes, and odors. Working at heights, like maybe on the ceiling. Ability to lift 50 pounds. Okay, hang on. Okay, support question number 6. Organize it below to plan out some of the main points you want to say in relation to the job ad you just read above. It's fine to make up some items to answer this letter. Okay, so for this part is pretend, right? I don't know if you've got maintenance skills. I certainly don't. But for the purposes of this question, pretend that you do so you can kind of practice answering it. So I've split up the type of brainstorming in 4 sections because I find people tend to focus on one category and not all of them. Make sure you mention your education, especially if you have any special qualifications that would be great for the job. Any job experience doing maintenance or repairs. Any specific skills that you have that would be useful in maintenance or repairs. Any personality traits that would be useful. Okay, resumes. So during the key letter, we are going to come back to the cover letters. I'm not going to do any more now. I'm just kind of talking generally about this. And then in tomorrow's lesson, we'll go back and look at the actual key function, okay? So a resume is normally sent with a cover letter to employers in response to job advertisements. Just like the cover letter, it's considered a business document and it should also be formal in tone. Your audience is the same as for the cover letter. It could be the boss, the manager, someone in human resources. Now, unlike a cover letter, a resume is not usually personalized for each job. Most people make one master resume with all their job information to use with every job they apply to. Resumes can have a variety of formatting styles. Now, the reason you don't normally personalize a resume is because one big thing that most bosses or human resources are looking for is they're looking for job gaps. They're looking for spots where you weren't working. And if there's too many, they may feel nervous about hiring you. They may worry that you aren't a good employee, that you annoy people, that you don't work, so you get fired. So in my example I used earlier, where I was talking about how some of my resume stuff was about teaching and some of it was about working in retail, if I made one resume that was only for teaching, that would be a very empty resume. It would look like I hadn't done very much work because most of my work was in retail. On the other hand, my retail one would have some job gaps because there were some spots where I was doing other things. So it's just best to keep one main resume that you apply for everything with. In most cases, there might be a few exceptions, but that is generally true. There are 3 types of resumes which can be used by a job applicant depending on the amount of experience and the audience. They are the chronological resume, the functional resume, or they've done them. Sorry, functional resume or a combination resume. Skills and functional resume are the same thing. I'm not sure why they said it that way. The chronological resume summarizes your education, and your job experiences, starting with the most recent events and going backwards in time. This is the most typical type of resume and is often the most preferred by the majority of organizations. The functional resume is going to place the most emphasis on your skills and important work responsibilities that you've done. Less emphasis is placed on work experience. This is a format sometimes used by people with less job experience but strong skills, or people with major job gaps, which would be obvious in a chronological resume. Some employers feel automatically suspicious of a functional resume because of this reason. Now, one time that you might want to use it is, let's say you are a parent who has been out of the workforce for like 10 years because you were raising children. Okay, you could easily explain that in a cover letter, and so they won't worry about that part of the job gap. But maybe you did a lot of things while you were not officially working that you could still list as skills. Like, let's say you helped to run the Parent Teacher Association. Maybe you did a lot of fundraising for sports teams. Maybe you were doing a lot of volunteer work at church, teaching children's ministry. All those things would be useful to list on a functional resume, even if they didn't happen at a workplace. So there are some times where a functional resume could be useful, but you do want to be cautious about it because some people sort of hate them and automatically reject them. A combination resume is one that's going to emphasize your skills, but will also list your relevant work experience. This one can be the best of both resume styles if you haven't worked continuously. This style may be more acceptable to employees than the functional resume. Now, if you're looking around at resumes online to kind of get some examples of how they should look, I've seen a lot with photos, but I find that is really a very American thing. In Canada, it is pretty heavily discouraged, and it may cause hiring managers to just toss that resume aside because they're worried about being accused of hiring you because you looked nice, or not hiring you because you didn't look nice, or that maybe you showed prejudice because of age, gender, attractiveness, ethnicity. So it's best just to avoid all of that by not putting a picture in. The only time I would see that as different would be if you're doing a job where your personal appearance is the main thing, like acting or modeling, right? That's different. The other thing is if you do have somebody who's maybe bigoted about somebody, like they only like to hire girls for this, they only like to hire boys in bathrooms, then you're giving them a reason to screen you out. So remember, you don't want to have anything that gives them a reason to not want to see you in person. So just eliminate that right away. Besides that, most resumes will have very similar sections regardless of how they format things. They're going to have some sort of personal information section that includes your name, your address, your phone number, your email, your fax number if you've got one. There will often be a summary where you do a brief summary of your overall skills and experience. Not all resumes have this section. Some have an objective instead, some have nothing there. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Work experience. You want to make sure you list the dates you worked there, the business name, the job title, and the job duties. Sometimes people just put down the job title and they leave off the job duties. But the problem with that is different job titles may mean something very different at different companies. At one job, administrative assistant might be mostly being the receptionist. You're doing a lot of answering the phones and writing down phone messages and greeting people. At another job, administrative assistant might mean you're helping an executive out and writing a lot of letters, doing a lot of filing, and doing very different work. If you're applying to someone who is picturing the one job in their head, I feel like that's going to qualify. You completely would qualify if you looked at the job duties. You want to make sure there's no confusion because sometimes the same job can be called different things. Like, are you an art teacher or an art instructor? Or are you an art trainer? Those are very similar words. Can get really confusing. Education and training. You also want to list the dates, the schools, and the diploma earned or working on. Now, if you've gone to multiple high schools, make sure you list every single one of them, okay? Don't just list WASA if you have also gone elsewhere. You also want to include any kind of things where you got a certificate, right? First aid certificate, red seal certificate, a smart serve certificate, heavy machinery training, any kind of special computer software or web design training. Um, Anything where you had to take a special course and someone else might not have it, put those kind of things in there. Okay. Skills. This is generally a brief list of relevant skills. Like I'm a great sewer, but that's got nothing to do with my teaching, so I don't mention it when I'm applying for teaching, right? If you're like the most awesome Fortnite player ever, but your job doesn't involve video games, don't mention it. It's not important. Also, only mention skills that you really are strong in. Don't say you're really organized if you aren't actually really organized, because that's going to lead to frustration and a high chance of you getting fired very quickly. Okay. Some common skills they like to see: second language skills, office skills, leadership skills, specific skilled trade abilities, computer skills, job specific computer program knowledge. By that, I mean a lot of jobs have certain types of programs that they only use. Like teachers use a specific program called PowerSchool for report cards. No one else is going to know that, but if I knew that, I would mention that on my report, on my resume. Um, a lot of point of sale systems for waitresses are very similar. If you know one, you would mention it. If you work at a warehouse, there might be very common database systems you use, or same thing at the hospital. If you know anything specific, mention it. Maybe it will be helpful. And then job duties. These job duties should be listed in a bullet list format, and they should always start with an active verb that shows what you were doing. And it should be in the past tense, like not um, help customers, because maybe you aren't still doing that. Helped customers, recorded messages. Try not to use vague phrases like in charge of or responsible, because they don't really paint a clear picture of what you know how to do. And then on the next page is a word bank of possible active verbs organized by work category. I don't have too much time to read that, but I will leave that up as we close. This is by no means an exhaustive list. It's just I noticed that sometimes people are having a hard time thinking of verbs, so I wanted to list some here that might generate some ideas to help you get started. Okay? We will be back tomorrow with the second half of this lesson. Take care and have a good night.